Good evening, Browns fans. It's Wednesday night. It's 7 o'clock. That means it's time for OBR Weekly. And fresh off the practice fields of Greenbrier, it is a legend, Mr. Freddie Greetham. How you doing, Fred?
Doing good, Barry.
That's
Good to be
good to
with you.
hear.
Yep.
Good to hear. Good to hear. You are ready to give us the skinny from what was going on down in West Virginia, and we are anxious to hear it. Of course, I have to start the show by saying that, as always, we are powered by your comments and questions. I bring some trifling stuff with me to the program, which I'll rely on. But what I really want is I want you guys to post questions and comments in the chat boxes on YouTube and Twitch, and to ask or talk about whatever you want to talk about, because it's your show. We're just sort of here to fill in the blanks about whatever you want to know or talk about your Cleveland Browns. So, Fred, if we don't get enough comments and questions, I read through your training camp preview about the 10 things that you wanted to see from Cleveland Browns training camp, and I'm going to follow up with you on those. But let's talk little bit about the news of the week from good old Greenbrier. One of the things is David Njoku talked to the media earlier this week, and he finally hit the practice field and looked good when he did hit the practice field. And he said last season was a quote-unquote little glimpse of what he can do. And I guess my question for you is, why does Njoku think that he can exceed that in 2024?
Well, it's good to be back here with you. I thought you were going to start out talking about bringing the OBR, the championship, in the pickleball tournament with the Browns media. Andrew Berry.
I'm sorry I overlooked that,
out
Fred.
to open his press conference. So anyway, no, Njoku's talking about the last year. If you remember, he had a streak. He kind of finished the season with like 30 catches in 5 games. Happened to be with Joe Flacco. And what he's talking about is he really thinks he can do that all year. He can, put the whole year together. I mean, 82 catches is good, but I think he's thinking he can go over 100 and over 1,000 yards and score a lot of touchdowns, doing that from start to finish and not just at the end. And it'll help with Deshaun Watson. I don't think it's any magic because it was Joe Flacco at quarterback.
Right.
But I think that showed the Browns how big of a weapon he can be. And Kevin Stefanski talked about it, even yesterday in the press conference when we talked to him, is that, he's right at the top of the list in playmakers, that you have plays being called, knowing that if you can get him the ball, he has a good chance to break a lot of tackles. And especially if they play more of a spread, you can put him out wide and you could find a matchup with a linebacker or a corner or a safety. And if you can get them one-on-one with him, you get him the ball quickly, he has a chance to break a tackle and make a big play. So I think that's what he's talking about, is just start to finish the whole season. We've seen in his first 7 years where, he'll have a big game and then he disappeared for like 3 weeks.
Right.
Then he'll have a big game. I think he's just wanting to have it from start to finish the whole year, and not so much great numbers, but, helps the team, helps the offense, the whole 9 yards.
Right. They come out with these preseason rankings of every single position, and Njoku keeps winding up like 8th or 9th, because there are so many good tight ends in the league these days. But I just can't help but feel he might be a little bit underrated. And now with Jamari Thrash and Jerry Jeudy able to stretch the field a little bit, give Njoku more opportunities underneath a little bit, he might be set to really break out in 2024. You think there's any merit to that?
What a shock. Browns players are underrated. Um, well, yeah, I mean, if this spread offense, if really, it goes back to number 4. If Deshaun Watson's on the field and they're really spreading things out, I think rising tide lifts all boats. The old saying is that you can see guys that you don't know much about have big years, and your stars would have even bigger years. If when a defense, if they double team Amari Cooper or they choose to take away Jerry Jeudy, there's got to be some break off somewhere. And David Njoku, if he draws a lot of attention, most teams don't have 5, 6, 7 great cornerbacks or safeties or coverage
Right.
linebackers. And that's where, even your lesser known names, your Cedric Tillmans, Elijah Moores, Jamari Thrash, David Bell could, have numbers, because when you're getting a matchup with maybe a lesser defensive back or a defender, you have a chance to be open. It all comes down to the quarterback getting them the ball and spreading it around. And so, I mean, I think Njoku's right at the top of the list. You have to say, not counting running backs, but just of receivers, tight ends, wide receivers. He's definitely, if he's not 1A, he's 1B,
Right.
playmaker potential. So, I think he even pointed out with Kevin Stefanski calling the plays, he likes that because he likes to call his number. So, I think that you could say he had a breakout year last year. I mean, 82 catches, went to the Pro Bowl, but I think he wants to get, or he thinks he can help the team and even get bigger numbers. You think about 17 games. If you play all the games, you're talking about 4 catches a game is, you're talking 68. So 6 catches a game puts you, right around 100.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
I think that, if you're doing a passing offense and he's 1 or 2 of the top, guys, I think he can have bigger numbers, especially on the yardage side of things.
Right. So, hoping for a big season from David Njoku. He thinks he can do a little bit better this year. Hey, we are going to have a special guest, if everything works right from a technology perspective, here in about 10 minutes or so. So be braced for that and get us any questions or comments you have before we hit that mark. We've already got a couple in here. I want to get to them from the YouTube chat room. MC Lawrence says that he is interested on your take in Tillman because he's a big Tennessee Volunteers fan. So, what is your take on Cedric Tillman so far?
I think he's got a lot of potential. He was able to take advantage, I think, of Amari Cooper not being at the off season and Jerry Jeudy kind of being held out with various ailment. So he was running with Elijah Moore as the starters, the top 2 wide receivers a lot of the offseason, and even got that at the mandatory minicamp in June down in at the Greenbrier. Cooper's obviously back. Jeudy has not been on the field yet. He's got some undisclosed. It's probably still what held him out, in the mini camp, something with his leg. But Tillman's done well. I watched him. I've done some video on him. I talked to Andrew Berry during the offseason. He said that he really does think he has a chance to be one of their top 3 receivers this year. If not 3, top 4. And so they're counting on him. And I think that's one of the reasons maybe they haven't brought in another, they added Jeudy and they added Thrash in the draft. They did a couple other free agent undrafted, but I was kind of proposing maybe get a veteran fourth guy. You know, last year they had Marquise Goodwin, really didn't do a whole lot.
Right.
But if you're going to have a passing offense, you got a lot of potential with Judy and Moore and Tillman and Bell and Thrash, but you really don't have any proven. I'm talking about a veteran on Mari Cooper proven, you know, that's been there, done that. Judy, people would say that, but he hasn't really had a breakout, in my opinion, and Elijah Moore. So they're hoping one of these young guys can really emerge. But if they don't feel at the end of training camp that's happened, they could add another veteran that's still available, whether a free agent or even make a trade for somebody, you know, to come in. There's a lot of, or I shouldn't say a lot, but there's 30 something guys that were unsigned that are out there. But I think Tillman, you know, they're going to give him every opportunity to be one of the top four, you know, in the rotation, you know, and he has that size, the range, you know, his rookie year got cut short a little bit at the end. They traded Donovan Peoples-Jones to open up for Tillman. He got to play, and then he got a concussion, got banged up, and missed the end of the season, the playoff.
Right.
But I think the sky's the limit on him. You know, it's really up to him to take advantage of the opportunities because they're going to give him every opportunity to be a key player, I think.
I am talking to our special guest as we try to get him set up here. So thank you for your take on Stead Tillman. Tactical Bacon OBR, a frequent commenter on the water cooler, wants to talk about DeJuan Jones and ask specifically if he spent any time at left tackle. I have not heard that, Fred. Did you see any of that down in Greenbrier?
No, he's been at right tackle. Jedrick Wills has not practiced as of yet. He's on the PUP list. He was on the field for the first time. I think it was Saturday, and I filmed him. You can look it up on Twitter. He didn't have a sleeve or a wrap on his leg like he had all off season. He seems to be walking around. I think he'll be out there pretty soon, but yeah, that's interesting because Conklin hasn't been out there at all. You know, he posted that he was cleared a while ago, but he's on the PUP list as well. Jones is taking advantage of it at right tackle. It will be interesting to see what they do with Conklin. He's got a big contract. He's a all-pro player if he's healthy. And so the speculation is DeJuan Jones will move him to left tackle. Now, Stefanski was asked about that. He said that during the course of training camp and the preseason, all their guys will be, you know, moved around. They all get work at both sides. Right now, it'd been James Hudson. He's the guy that, you know, on the roster. If you remember last year, Hudson stepped in when Conklin, and then after Jones went down, they kept him at right tackle. And then they signed Garen Christian kind of off the street to be the left tackle. Well, Christian moved on. So, yeah, right now, Hudson's playing left tackle and Jones is at right tackle. It will be interesting to see, but I think he'll get some reps, you know, at the left side. But I think, if anything, they feel his future's at right tackle. That's where he's played at Ohio State. He did well last year. So they feel that they have Jedrick Wills. They have him, you know, he's in the fifth-year option. So they have to make a decision, you know, what they're going to do with him. But right now, you know, I think they're counting on him to be the, you know, left tackle.
We have a question from Kevo680 in the Twitch chat room. The Twitch chat room, generally a source of snide remarks throughout the broadcast. Very quiet tonight, other than Kevo. So I want to make sure I get Kevo's question in. And he wants to talk a little bit about the roster machinations at the bottom of the roster. And he asked, with the new kickoff rules, do you think the team will favor bottom of the roster players that can add that special teams presence over players that can play the position better? I don't see a lot of spots available on our roster, and isn't that the case? So you know, how many spots do you think are going to be, available for those special teams experts with this roster so crowded, Fred?
Yeah, I think that it's a good question, and it is going to be extremely competitive. I mean, when with the money guaranteed contracts, I think they're upwards of 40 or better that already, barring injury, probably have spots, already because of guaranteed money. Now, I know they did sign, besides the kickers and punters and snapper, at least two guys that are just really specialists. That's Justin Hardy. He was from Cleveland, Glenville. He's made the Pro Bowl as a special team guy. He's listed as a cornerback, but I think he's going to be, a core special team. And Tony Brown's also cornerback, and he's a core specialist. So as far as with the new kickoff role, I think that we've seen some of the bigger guys, linebackers and guys like that are, it's a little tighter in space and so forth. And then you got, your return guys. You have to have two. So Naeem Hines hasn't been out there yet. So they've had a slew of guys. James Prochet's back. He was the primary punt returner. It's going to be some interesting roster decisions, which you have to look at. They have 90 now, 53 make the roster, 16 on the practice squad. And there's not limitations. It's not like it used to be where the practice squad was pretty much rookies and first-year players. They look at that now as almost an extension of the roster. So you could see what they've done in the past is use guys on the practice squad and elevate them on game day, to be the return guy or, for special teams. So there's really like 69 spots when you look at that. And so I do think special teams is big. Bubba Ventrone, takes it seriously, and he's got some clout when he's able to get some free agent signings that are just really special teams. This year it's Hardy and Brown. Last year they had Matthew Adams and Ford. So yeah, it's a big part of it, and that's how the bottom of the roster guys are going to make it. Can they be a gunner on the punt, or can they be, a blocker or a tackler on the kickoff team? What have it? They're going to have to do things that maybe they haven't done before.
Right. Gonna be tough for those special teams specialists. But if you're on the bubble, having that special teams expertise is certainly gonna help. Question from Kelly Black in YouTube about Devin Bush. Big wide open question there. He's got so much potential, Fred. Did he stand out to you any way at all when you were in Greenbrier?
Yeah, I mean, there's 90 guys, and it's kind of hard to.
Yeah.
They're really spread all over the place. The defense, where we were allowed to watch, if you saw in my videos, we're on one side or the end zone, and the defensive linemen and the linebackers were the farthest away from us. So, I mean, I saw 30 out there. I didn't really do much videoing of them because they were almost too far away, but I think he looks fine. It's really going to be, what's the reason he hasn't really been able to establish himself? Why did the Steelers give up on him? Why did the Seahawks give up on him? A top 10 pick, finished third in rookie. We all know he blew out his ACL. Is he just not as fast as he was? The Browns are going to give him an opportunity. He could be, that's a guy I think could make the team as a special teams guy. If he can really prove that he can cover and get down there. The way I look at it right now, Tony Fields is probably the replacing Sion Takitaki in the three linebacker segment. But the Browns ran three linebackers 16% of the time, which was like the lowest in the NFL. So they don't put that high a priority. I mean, Fields, they like him. He's in his fourth year. I think Fields and Bush are special teams guys and could see the field, in that role. You also have Diabate and you have the rookie Bookie Watson.
Mm-hmm.
So, a lot of that's going to be determined in the preseason, but I think special teams will be big. And Taki was a starter, but he played a lot on special teams, and that's what they really need out of their linebackers because they don't play more than two most of the time. And right now, barring injury, it's going to be JOK and Jordan Hicks. Those are your two.
Mm-hmm.
Jordan Hicks is your captain, your green dot, and JOK is going to be, what we saw last year, only he's going to be out there most of the time now. So
Right.
Bush is going to have to carve out a role. I think he signed a 1-year deal, kind of a minimum type deal. So they don't have a lot invested. It's kind of taking a flyer on him. And they're hoping to catch lightning in a bottle with him. High pick, former 10th pick in the draft. Is he healthy and is he able to make an impact?
All right. Thank you, Fred. Keep those questions coming. We got 5 of them lined up right here as our special guest tries to make his way in. Hopefully he can. If not, we will do that next week. World's Fastest Fat Man writes in and says, "Hey, Fred, who is standing out of camp? Anyone we are not talking about otherwise who's been extra verbal and more hype? And what about coaches other than Vrabel?" So anybody just sort of leaping out to you as sort of taking charge out there on the field? I know there's 90 guys and a lot of noise going on, but anyone jump out at you?
I'd say Juan Thornhill. You can see that he's determined to put last year behind him. I've heard him make comments. Grant Delpit said, Thornhill's really chomping at the bit because last year he felt it was a disappointment. He said he could never remember a year he didn't have an interception going back to even Pee Wee ball and stuff like that. So he seems to be running around out there and seems to be healthy. Thinks that, the calf injuries behind him. Again, it's hard because they haven't done a whole lot. They haven't really, the first 3 days were non-pad. The first day of pads Monday, it rained and they cut it down to like a 45-minute practice. And then it rained again. They flip-flop practice yesterday. Today they were off. So tomorrow, but so far I'd just say that, again, I thought Elijah Moore, he's been out there. I give him credit. Last year, he was out there all the time. He looked good in the training camp, and he's been out there. We haven't seen Jerry Jeudy. Njoku's looked awesome. He missed like the first 3 days, I think, or first 2 days. He came back his first practice, and Watson gave him a big hug, and then he threw him the ball, and he scored a touchdown. So again, it's hard to separate when they're not really being physical 11 on 11 or tackling or things like that. But I think so far so good. I will say the exception is, who's looked good to me, this might be off the radar, was Nick Chubb. After practice one day, we were walking back to the tent. We had just finished interviews, and number 24 was out on the field with a trainer, and he was running. I didn't have like the real Nick Chubb of, like a simulation to see, but he looked to me like he was running full speed. Now, maybe he was, but everybody that saw that, we weren't allowed to video it, he looked really good. And he even was zigzagging a little bit. So I'm not trying to raise the bar that he's going to be back next week, but as they're going to be very careful with him. But he looked very fast to me running.
Well, I think we lost Fred there for a minute. Now you're stuck with me for a few minutes until Fred can find his way back in here. I'm not sure how that happened, but there are mysterious goblins infesting all of our technology. Welcome back, Fred. I had
Sorry
to
about that.
improvise for a couple minutes without you as the knowledge in the room dropped dramatically.
Yeah, it's that
But thank
West
you.
Virginia wiring or something.
Must be. But thanks for the good word on Chubb, and we are trying to keep our expectations reasonable despite all the positive words that we've heard about him. Linked an article in the Newswire this morning as well. If you haven't seen today's Newswire, came I think originally from WKYC. Talked a little bit about talked a little bit about the technology used to repair Nick Chubb's knee. Very Batman-esque high-tech stuff they were doing. Kevo680 from our Twitch chat room says, I see that Landers kid is shown to be a deep threat option, uh, albeit with the second string. Do you think he has an outside chance of making the team? His size and speed are things that we are missing in the receiver room. We've gotten a couple questions on him, Fred. He's intriguing to folks, but boy, making this roster at wide receiver is going to be a real tough ask for a undrafted free agent.
Yeah, they've invested a lot. Their top three on paper are all acquired in a trade, and Cooper, Judy, and Moore. And then you have some high pick, David Bell, 3rd round, Cedric Tillman, 3rd round, Jamari Thrash, 5th round, not really high, but he was drafted this year.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a tall task for Landers to make the team. I think he's got a realistic chance to make it the practice squad. A year ago, they had a guy named Austin Watkins, I think was his name, that was all world, in training
Right.
camp. And he actually, I think, made the team. So he had a tremendous training camp and preseason. And this kid's shows last year, Watkins was kind of in the same situation. So anything can happen, injuries or whatever, but I think it's a long shot. I mean, they're going to they have draft picks, free agents, and so forth ahead of them, and there's only so much room. Like even 5 wide receivers, I think they probably keep 6, but then you got guys that are returners like James Prochet. Do you keep him on the roster? Last year they had basically 6 receivers. So I don't see more than 6. I see 1 or 2 on the practice squad. So I think that would be like his best chance.
Yeah, it's going to be a real tough go for him to make this team practice squad. Probably his best bet, as you said, Fred. Another question about a guy further down on the roster, UDF running back Aiden, 6'3", 240, decent hands, could be an H-back, fullback, according to Dimitri here. Have you seen anything from him yet, or has he not really popped onto your radar quite yet?
I think he looked pretty good in the offseason program, rookie mini camp. I mean, stands out his size, that big. Again, if Nick Chubb comes back sooner than later, you got a pretty crowded running back room with Deontay Foreman, a guy they went out and signed, and Jerome Ford and Pierre Strong and Naeem Hines, all the way around. So I think, again, his best chance would be the practice squad. It could be a guy you develop into like that H-back or fullback or whatever. So I think, again, like so many of these guys, preseason, training camp, that's where they're really going to get their chance. The John Kelly's in the past has made the practice squad because he's had big preseasons. The top of the depth chart at running back's pretty set. You lost Kareem Hunt, but you went out and signed Dante Foreman and Naeem Hines. So that's an extra body. And you also have returning Jerome Ford, your leading rusher, and you have Pierre Strong, and everybody hopes Nick Chubb's back. And
Right.
so if Nick Chubb were to be back by the regular season, I think there's going to be even some veterans that aren't going to make it. They're going to have to not make it just with the sheer numbers. So Robbins, I believe, is the only rookie that they brought in at running back. So I do think he's got a good chance. I think it comes down to him or John Kelly, on the practice squad. Kelly's been on it for like 3 years, I think, at least. And Robbins has some youth on him. And as you point out, he's got the size that maybe he can do something else. So to me, that's his best chance.
Right. Yeah, it's gotta be a real tough go for him as well. Teddy wants to ask about Mike Vrabel. I think you were on the road during his media availability yesterday. But what were your impressions of Vrabel during the first few days of training camp, Fred?
Well, I don't want to call you out, but maybe you didn't pay attention to my Twitter feed. I was right there front and center. He talked about growing up in Northeast Ohio and being a big Browns fan, and in middle school eating dog biscuits, had the chain that you could eat. And, no, he's a delight to be around. You watch him at practice, he runs around. He's working with Njoku one-on-one. I got a video of him. I bet you it was 25 seconds. They looked like they were dancing. He was showing him techniques, but he's doing tight ends. He's doing special teams. You see him with the offensive line. He seems to be really recharged, and he admitted, it's been a while, but it was kind of cool to be in brown and orange and the team that he grew up, as a kid watching. And, he admitted this is a two-way street. The Browns are getting service from him, but he's observing, what they're doing. And he didn't say this, but he's going to take this wherever he goes next. And he could take some people from the Browns, whether it be coaches or front office or players. He's developing relationships, and I think it's all good. So many guys, coaches get fired or let go. They go to a booth and they're commentating at games. He wanted to stay out on the field, and I think this has re-energized him because he doesn't have the responsibility that he did. He's a coaching consultant. He's not going to be involved on game days. He said that's how it should be. And I don't know what all that means other than they don't want him to know, assuming he's going to be a head coach next year somewhere else. I don't know totally why he couldn't be involved in game day, but I think it was mostly his choice. But yeah, he could have just sat out the year. He's getting paid by the Titans. So the Browns are just, whatever the Browns don't pay him, the Titans have to make up the rest of his salary. So the Browns are, paying him, he's probably getting a couple $100,000 or something, but still, when you're talking about millions of dollars, they're getting him dirt cheap. Right. And they're getting a lot of effort out of him. He could just be sitting in a room, but he's down on the field running around. He runs a sprint after every pass that Jameis Winston finishes a drill. They race they throw at one end, then they go about 50 yards and throw back, and they race every day. I've had videos of them doing that, and I don't know what age he is now, but he's not losing by a whole lot to Winston. And he just said, he enjoys that and he feels like it gets him going. And you can just tell where he is. He's running around out there. He's recharged. He's excited. Probably what you would be doing if you were out on the field. You'd be so giddy and excited, you wouldn't know what to do, Bear.
Well, we're both Buckeyes, so I'd probably be out there racing Winston too, and a lot of built-in speed for anybody who went to Ohio State. Justin Space asks, I heard Jedrick Wills is a top 15 left tackle in the league. Is that possibly true? And I don't know whose rankings those were, but I think that he could be potentially. Whether he is right now, Fred, what's your opinion?
I think he is. There's 32 teams, right? So that's
Yeah.
like a dead down the middle, very average guy in the NFL. And I think he is. I don't think he's a pro bowler. I know he made it one year as a alternate, but I don't think he's a top tier, at least at this phase of his career, going into his fifth year. But you can't really, probably, most people can't name too many left tackles. Who are the top? If you think about, you start naming them, there's the Joe Batonios of left tackle, but I don't think that would be that far off. He's an average middle of the road tackle. I mean, Garen Christian, the Browns picked him up off the street last year. I'd never even heard of him, and he's starting immediately at left tackle because they felt he was the best option. And I think I didn't really hear his name called a whole lot. I don't think he really caused problems. Joe Flacco was able to do well, and yet they didn't bring him back. And I don't even know if he's on another roster right now. For a while, he wasn't. So, I think at this stage of the career, Jedrick Wills has been underperforming. When everybody, if he would have been drafted in the third, fourth, fifth round, I don't think everybody would be all over him. But he was picked 10th in the draft. So everybody's expecting him to be a Pro Bowl every year left tackle. He's no Joe Thomas. But the one thing I will say with him, I think he's, what is he? 23. Okay. Excuse me. He turned 24 in May. So he's 24 years old. This is his fifth year. I think he's got a chance to get better and improve. I mean, one thing I just notice on the side and watching, it seems like he doesn't maybe engage as much as you might want. He doesn't seem to be hustling all over the place, but I think that you could do worse. And the Browns, are in a hunt for the playoffs. I think they want good players out there. And I think that if they felt like they could replace him, somebody asked earlier about DeJuan Jones. Why wouldn't you just throw him over there then and say, you're the left tackle? We're moving on from Jedrick Wills, because they haven't come up with a better option. And before you just throw somebody away, you better make sure you got a better option. I say that about all positions, but let's give the benefit of the doubt, see how he does coming back from the injury, and we'll go from there.
Right. We will see how it goes with Jedrick Wills. And Andy Dickerson certainly has an opportunity to make a name for himself if Jedrick Wills can hit his prime as a left tackle with the Cleveland Browns. Let's talk a little bit about our friends at Core Home Fitness, who sponsor this program. Core Home Fitness is your home, corehomefitness.com, for the best adjustable dumbbells on planet Earth, according to New York Times, Men's Health, Consumers Reports, you name it. Anyone who is in the business of judging who makes the best adjustable dumbbells puts Core Home Fitness at the very top. So if you go to corehomefitness.com, you'll see those for sale, along with the holders for those products like the Glute Drive Plus, a lot of great home gym equipment. You can bring the gym home. You don't have to schlep out to the gym all the time. It works out great. You don't have to pay that monthly fee to go out to the gym and then curse yourself because you're not using it enough. Check them out for the ultimate in home fitness equipment. They have fast returns, hassle-free returns, fast shipping. These guys know what they're doing. And as proof of that, they sponsored the OBR. So obviously, an all-around awesome company and worth your checking out. And I'm taking insults again from the Twitch chat room. So all of it is good. It's all good. So let's go back to your questions. If you've got questions in the chat room, feel free to hit us up. I've got a couple left here, and then you have to go back to my tripe. So please save us from that by hitting us up with some additional questions in the Twitch and YouTube chat room. Connie has a question. Asked who is going to call the offensive plays, asked if Jimmy Haslam let the cat out of the bag. Actually, it was Kevin Stefanski, right? Who came forth and announced that he would be calling plays, right, Fred?
Kevin Stefanski was the most forthright right out of the gate. On Thursday, we arrived. The team had practice at 2:50, and right after practice, he came over to talk to the media, and without even being asked, he said, "I'm going to call the plays." And he also announced that Greg Newsome was having surgery and Dalvin Tomlinson was having surgery. Normally, you have to pry that stuff out of him. He just said he felt it was the right thing to do. So, no, he announced that. Jimmy Haslam didn't talk till second or third day. But, yeah, Kevin announced to us. He just felt it was the best thing. And I do think it's one of the better things that about him. And I will say this, and he pointed it out, and I talked to him later. We had an informal time with him that evening, is that they have 6 or 7 new offensive coaches. What's the constant on the offensive staff? Kevin Stefanski. The rest of the team is familiar with him. You know, you got all new coaches on offense, and you're going to just throw somebody new in there. They're all working together. They're all making the calls together. But I do think he speaks with one voice, and that really, I do think, is the advantage. But no, he announced it to us before anybody even asked.
All right. And, you know, do you think that's a big deal? You know?
No, because they're all working together. You know, even if he was on the call, he could veto anything if Dorsey was calling. And, you know, I think it's overrated because basically they're all giving their input and he makes the decision. And I think he's done fine with it. Nobody was arguing when Joe Flacco's throwing for 400 yards a game. You know, if every play is designed to be successful, and it's up to the players to execute them. So again, Deshaun Watson is doing well. Kevin Stefanski's going to get all the credit, you know, for great play calls.
All right. Next question comes from, let's see here, Justin Space. And Justin Space wants to ask the obvious question about how Jerry Jeudy looks so far. And so far, we don't know, right, Fred? He hasn't been out on the field yet.
He looks good in no uniform. He's just walking around. He's been on the side. He hasn't practiced as of yet. He's not listed on the PUP list or anything. He missed the rookie mini camp with, I think he had a leg injury. I don't even know if they disclosed it. But just like Myles Garrett, some of those guys, even though they're not on a list, Cameron Mitchell was like that. He missed the first 4 practices. He started practicing yesterday. Stefanski, well, Njoku did too. Stefanski said that he'll be back real soon. Same way with Garrett. I think because it rained and the fields were soggy, that might have held it off a little bit. But I wouldn't be surprised if when they if they don't practice tomorrow, I'm pretty sure they would be back on the field on Sunday when they open back up here in Berea.
All right. And next from Surge MDC, who was also giving me grief a little bit earlier. So he's doing his job. It says, with all the rain in West Virginia this week, were there any grumblings about wishing we were in a dome? You hear any of that, Fred?
No. You know, I think it's pretty obvious that the team, Andrew Berry weighed in that he prefers a dome. I think that's the sentiment around the team. I think the ownership, that's the way they want to go. But as far as in Greenbrier, they don't have an indoor facility. So when it rains, the best they have is a turf field. They have 2 grass fields is where they're usually practicing. But when it rained, they went down to, they have a 100-yard turf field. It looks like a nice, well, it could be used for a high school football team or something, because they could squeegee the water off and practice. But they did their walkthrough in the rainstorm in the cafeteria or in their meeting room. They just moved tables out of the way and did that. So if they were up in Berea, they would have had their indoor facility. And now that they've finished the weight room, they've got all the weights out of there. So they'll be in that indoor facility, when it rains up here.
Okay, fair enough. Well, as I think people know, over the years, the OBR has been gifted with a number of great writers, young writers who come up and learn their craft on the OBR. And I'd like to bring another young writer into the chat, or at least young relatively, to the other people who are here. You may have heard of him. His name is Lane Atkins, and he is with us right now to talk about returning to the fold. Welcome, Lane Atkins. How are you doing, sir?
Hey, what's up, guys? Hello, Mr. Legend. How you doing,
Good to
Fred?
see. Good to see you.
How was your road trip?
Uneventful, the way I like it.
I heard you were Mr. Tournament down there.
That is true. Me and Dan Murphy, public relations guy, beat Jean Peter Baptiste and Mary Kay Cabot for the championship.
Good way to smack them around a little bit.
It was merciless too. It was like 11-3 or something like that. It was
First three games
you guys rolled.
First 3 games were 11-0, 11-0, 11-0, 33-0, and the championship game was 11-3. And then we played an exhibition game. We got challenged and we gave up 5 or 6 in that. But overall, 5-0, 55-9, I think was our. So it was a pretty much dominating performance, I believe.
Oh, you got a little bored, so you showed a little mercy, huh?
Yep.
How did those old baseball skills translate to the pickleball court, Fred? I mean, you picked this up awful fast.
I haven't really played. I played once with the grandkids this summer. I had, in all seriousness, a lot of those guys hadn't played either. Tom Withers and I were the only 2 that came with paddles, and mine was my wife's. But yeah, so athleticism. I'm a little older, but I can still get to the ball in that.
All right.
In that sport, that's pretty important.
Well, I hope you won valuable prizes. That luggage or new car or something from this pickleball tournament.
Got an attaboy.
You got an attaboy? All right. Well, that counts for something.
Attaboy, and he moved up 1 seat.
There you go.
Yep.
Well, Lane, it is good to see you, my friend. You are back in the forums now with us, and we've got some other scurrilous things planned. Did you want to talk a little bit about some of what you're scheming up, sir?
I'm doing some things behind the scenes. We'll see how it goes. You and I will be talking, doing quite a bit of work with Bernie Kozar that we'll be disclosing here shortly. do some interviews, and I have some real talk with Bernie that can come out in the papers. You and I had a meeting with him about 6 weeks before that whole story came out that we didn't want to come out and, publish that. Everybody else jumped all over the bandwagon about, it didn't really do it any justice on what the real story was for him and his family.
Right.
We kept quiet and tried to want to do it the right way. So we're gonna take that journey down that road with him.
Right.
Besides that, and then doing that with the OBR, we're gonna be doing a lot of things with the OBR. I'm gonna do a lot of things behind the scenes quietly. Gonna do some work in the forums. You and I are gonna do some things here, podcasting. We're gonna see what happens, see how it goes, and everything works well. We'll keep doing it.
Exactly. We're going to try some stuff. Lane and I are going to try a little bit of podcasting. We're going to talk Browns football. We're going to talk about life. Going to be a little. I'm not going to say it's going to be like the Newswire, because nothing is like the Newswire. It's too weird to be
Thank goodness.
replicated. Yeah, exactly. Replicated in any form. But we'll go beyond Cleveland Browns football. We're going to talk about what's going on in our lives, and philosophy and Cleveland Browns, and whatever is front and center in our minds. We're going to talk about, and so that's going to be coming soon to a podcast station near you. We've got other plans in the making here with Mr. Lane Atkins. And I can't tell you how excited I am to see you on screen with us here, Lane, and getting back into action, sir. So it's a thrill.
Yeah, hopefully it's an enjoyable time. We can get some things done, and hopefully, bring back the reality of everything that we do. There's a good group of guys here at the OBR, and hopefully we can put this whole thing together and have the OBR what it's always been and always was, just the solid voice of news and information, rather than the scattered steal everybody's information, led by the legend here who's out in Bury, pounding it there. I think we're got an opportunity to make some noise.
Yeah, I want to apologize to Fred for not being on top of his Twitter feed when he was talking to Rael. That's my mistake. I know, as all modern journalists do, what I'm supposed to be doing is sitting on top of everybody's Twitter feeds, taking their material and writing articles from it. I've learned that that's how you do journalism these days. I was not doing my job. I have to get better at it. Lesson learned, but
well, isn't that what everybody does? Everybody just sits on X and steals everybody's shit and decides they just want to, claim it for their own and get a name for themselves and move on and
that's our Lane camp coverage
and steal the next guy's things.
I'm down there in Greenbrier. There's 10 to 12 of us, maybe certain days 14, 15. But you'd think there's 3,000 reporters down there with when you read everybody that's on the internet writing stories. It's like all coming from pretty much a consensus of the videos and what's being reported by those boots on the ground.
Yeah, it's the most amazing thing. And you got 2,900 of those people are afraid to go to West Virginia, so they wouldn't even know where the hell they started from the get-go.
So we provide a valuable service here, keeping other Brown sites busy, following Fred's Twitter feed, even if the publisher of the site sometimes neglects to do it. Listen, Lane, it is so exciting to have you back, have you in the house, and
thank you.
Let's continue to do it, man. Let's continue to do it, all right?
That's what we'll do.
All right, buddy. We'll see you again real soon.
Later. Fred, next time, bud.
See ya.
Good
to see you.
All right. We are out of questions. A lot of people in the chat room saying hi to Lane and excited to see him. I have a couple questions I wanted to talk about, if you can deal with that. let's see here. Oh, we do have one from chat username. He asked, are there any critical holes to be filled on the Browns, or do we start our shed player list now? I think you can, there were I saw a lot of articles on the day off with people predicting 53-man rosters. I think you can pretty effectively do that right now, Fred. There's really only, like 6 or 7 spots available on this roster, right?
Well, yeah, that's the thing that's so critical is the injury situation. It's just like I agreed with Stefanski said there's certain positions, or I should say Andrew Berry said, you look on paper and you think the defensive tackle is a deep position. And you might have to be cutting or letting loose, a key player. But then injuries. Who had Dalvin Tomlinson on the radar that he would – during his physical, they find out he needs to have knee surgery, and then you have Harris missed yesterday, and you got Maurice Hurst and Quentin Jefferson at the starting position. Hall was out for a practice, and so they have depth at positions, but you never know with injuries what could happen. It's just like pitching. A lot of people thought Cleveland baseball team had a lot of depth, and their starting pitching seems to be like one of their weak spots. You just never have enough. And it's like cornerbacks. You never have enough of them. And Newsome, they're hoping he'll be back, but surgery on the hamstring's kind of rare, so
right.
When you're at a speed position, especially at a cornerback, what's his future for this year? And so you just really have to be on the lookout all the time for depth and upgrades. And a lot of that's predicated on injuries. You just follow the NFL in general every day in training camp, and you'll see so-so's out for the season, such and such tore an ACL. You just hope you can keep that stuff to a minimum.
Yeah, the Newsome injury is a bit of a concern because surgery was required. Hamstrings usually are an injury where, it's a lot of guesswork in terms of how fast people will come back. But surgery on a hamstring?
Yeah, I've never really heard.
Yeah.
It means it detached from the bone, I think. That's why you need surgery.
Yeah, it's a little bit concerning. Connie asked, do you think Mo Hurst will make the roster? And that's an interesting question.
Well, I think a lot of it comes down to what do they think about Siaka Ika? Second year, he didn't get to play much. You invested a 3rd-round pick. Do you think he can play, or do you think he was a mistake? I don't know what the coaches really think about him. He was inactive almost all last season, but, they drafted Michael Hall, their top pick. They drafted Jawan Briggs with their last pick. They signed Quentin Jefferson. So that tells, and you lost basically Jordan Elliott. So they brought in 3 guys to replace one. And Hurst was the guy they brought back, as well as Shelby Harris. So it's like I said, you don't feel that you can never have enough, especially defensive tackles. I think they felt like that was an area of need to strengthen. So they may keep an extra just to keep them. But my thinking is if they really think Mike Hall's ready to go from day one and Ika is ready to go, and all things being equal, Dalvin Tomlinson, that maybe they could trade a Hurst, guy you re-signed on a 1-year deal, for a position that you need some depth, whether it be a tight end, whether it be a linebacker or something like that. So right now I'd say yes, because you don't know if Tomlinson, how soon he'll be back. They said they hope he's back for the opener, but I think they like him or they wouldn't have brought him back. But his biggest problem has been availability. Last year I think he had one of his best seasons, and then he tore his pec and finished on injured reserve. So you really can't schedule injuries.
Right. It's been a little bit of a history with him. So thank you for the question, Connie. Appreciate it. Thank you for the questions all night long. I hardly even had to touch my stuff. So obviously, well done helping us to avoid Barry's questions. Tactical Bacon OBR saying OBR going full beast mode with the introduction of Lane, reintroduction of Lane tonight. That we are. It's getting fun. It's getting exciting as we head into the 2024 season. Thank you, Fred, for all your work down in West Virginia and for sharing it with us here tonight.
Sure.
We will be back here again, of course, next Wednesday at 7 o'clock to talk about the next week of training camp and hopefully no injuries and lots of good practice.
Next week will be game week. They play their first game a week from Saturday against the Packers at home.
It starts fast, man. It just
And then
runs
it's every
right up.
week.
Yep.
Other than one bye.
All right. Well, stay tuned for that. We'll be back here next Wednesday talking Packers, talking all kinds of stuff. Be nice to see you. Thanks for hanging out with us. Good night,
Good night.
everybody.
See you next week.